I'm political editor Mike Flannery.
And I'm Natalie Bomke. Thanks for joining us here on Fox32Chicago.com for your 2022 Illinois primary coverage.
We are following all the big races right now. Let's start with an update on that Republican race for the gubernatorial nomination. Let's take a look at the board right there.
Polls have been closed for an hour now, and the front runner, or the assumed front runner, looks like he's holding his own here, Darren Bailey, with 44% of the vote.
That's exactly the number he had in one of the recent pre-election polls. Richard Irvin at 21, Jesse Sullivan trailing at 18, and Gary Rabine, the North Suburban paving contractor, at 11%. Now, we also want to talk about voter turnout, and Natalie, we were looking at some of those numbers earlier. In the city, it has not been outstanding. It's been kind of slow.
Which is not uncommon for a primary.
And again, you see some people lined up here at the so-called super site of early voting down in the Loop. But in the city, the turnout has not been super sensational.
I want you to break down, though, the voting in each of the wards, because you have the breakdown. You're holding here in your hand, or you were.
It wasn't final, but it appeared that the North Lakefront wards, some of the what's traditionally regarded as white majority wards, had a larger turnout in the city of Chicago than some of the other Hispanic and African American areas, with some exceptions, but as a general rule. How will that play tonight? We'll see if that figures in the returns. We'll see if that is also reflected out in the suburbs. But there is big news in the race for Democrats in the 3rd Congressional District. The Cook Political Report, their numbers cruncher, a guy named Dave Wasserman, has declared that he believes State Representative Delia Ramirez is going to be, and boy, you look at those numbers with 41% reporting, she's at 66%. State Representative Delia Ramirez endorsed by Chuy Garcia, by the progressives in the party, the Bernie Sanders wing, if you will, of the party. At this point, trouncing Gil Villegas, the alderman from the Northwest Side, who was the chair of the City Council Black Caucus. And then Iman Chahadi at 6%. He's involved in that strange House Ethics Committee investigation of Representative Maureen Newman, who we're going to be hearing about more in her face-off with Sean Casten.
And then another big race we're watching is the 6th Congressional District. And these are two Democrats who are squaring off because of redistricting, Mike.
Yes. And boy, again, with 10% of the vote in, it's still early, but 68% for Sean Casten, 28% for Maureen Newman, two incumbent Democrats facing off against each other in a contest created by the remap. Charles Hughes, who's a retired blue-collar worker for a local utility, at 5%.
And then tonight, a crowded field to replace Congressman Bobby Rush as well in the 1st Congressional District.
Yeah, and Rush, of course, has stepped down after a long time in a district that has enormous history for African Americans. It's the first place north of the Mason-Dixon line in the 20th century that a black was elected to Congress back in the 1920s. Jonathan Jackson, brother of former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., son of the famous civil rights leader, the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., at 30%, Pat Dowell at 21%, Karen Norrington Reeves, who worked at Cook County, she has the endorsement of the outgoing Congressman Bobby Rush at 13%, right behind her, Jackie Collins, a former WBBM TV videotape editor, a longtime state lawmaker, 38% reporting.
All right, we also want to take a look at the 15th Congressional GOP district race. This is downstate with Mary Miller, who is backed by former President Trump, and Rodney Davis, five-term congressman, facing off there as well. Again, you've got two incumbents because of the redistricting facing off against each other. Right,
and we are waiting to see those numbers. And right now, Mary Miller, who was endorsed, this is only 5% in. She was endorsed by Donald Trump this past weekend. Down near Quincy at that big rally, Natalie, and that's the rally at which Mr. Trump also endorsed Darren Bailey for governor. Rodney Davis, also an incumbent, in line to get a big chairmanship if he should survive this and Republicans take control of the U.S. House. But right now, he's 8 points down, 54-46.
And let's also check on the 11th congressional race, Mike.
Yeah, that, of course, is where Congressman Bill Foster is the incumbent, and right now Catalina Lauf, with only 3% reporting, she's at 32%. She's been an outspoken supporter of President Trump. Jerry Evans, 23%, Mark Carroll, 19%, and Susan Hathaway Altman at 12%. Very early in that contest.
Right, again, that's the GOP side of that race. Let's also
and Bill Foster's the Democratic incumbent there.
Thank you. And then let's also check in on the Secretary of State race. This is one we've been talking quite a bit about.
That's right. Two of the bigger names we're watching there. Alexi Giannoulias right now.
Former treasurer.
Yeah, former state treasurer who ran for the U.S. Senate, got beaten by Mark Kirk some years ago, getting back into the political game here, only 18% in, but he has a significant lead over Ana Valencia, the Chicago city clerk, who has the backing of Dick Durbin, Tammy Duckworth, and some others. Alderman David Moore from the 18th Ward at 10%, and then Sidney Moore, 3%.
And speaking of Tammy Duckworth, we're expecting to hear from her any moment now. She did not have anyone running against her in the Democratic primary, and so she is celebrating tonight with J.B. Pritzker, who's still waiting on those results. He does have a challenger, but is expected to win.
Yeah, so she's down at his party, presumably since he's got a bigger checkbook than she does. Maybe he's going to sign the checks. But here you see the Pritzker headquarters, JB and Juliana. Juliana, of course, Juliana Stratton, the lieutenant governor. We are expecting soon for Tammy Duckworth to come out and to, I don't know what you do in an uncontested primary. I guess you can come out and claim victory in an uncontested primary. Why not? And then the lieutenant governor will speak, and after them will be the governor himself, and we're expecting him to pivot from this primary where he has spent millions and millions of dollars in an unprecedented amount of meddling in the Republican primary.
And speaking of that, let's pull those numbers back up as we kind of discuss this, Mike. Speaking of that meddling, we talked earlier about this, but
there's the beneficiary.
Exactly. Darren Bailey, Governor Pritzker, along with the Democratic Governors Association, spending close to $40 million in order to back Darren Bailey as the GOP nominee for governor. Why, Mike?
Because they think that Mr. Bailey is going to be easier to beat in the fall. We'll see. Darren Bailey says, J.B. Pritzker, be careful what you wish for. He vows to run a solid statewide campaign. He comes, of course, from he represents a state Senate district that is down by the Kentucky border, where the part of Illinois that he represents is closer to Nashville, Tennessee, than it is to Chicago. It is literally south of the Mason-Dixon line. If you were to extend it from Virginia, you know, Carbondale, where Southern Illinois University is famously farther south than Richmond, Virginia. As you can tell when you see those evergreen magnolia trees blooming at this time of year, all those beautiful, fragrant magnolias down there.
I love how you paint the picture, Mike. I really do. I want to talk about, though, not just J.B. Pritzker, but other billionaires getting involved in this race. And let's talk now about the GOP side of this, because we have Ken Griffin, who, owner of Citadel, just moved it out of Illinois to Florida. So maybe that doesn't bode well. Maybe he saw the writing on the wall for Mayor Richard Irvin. But he was backing Irvin, and then we have another billionaire who was backing Bailey.
Yes, Dick Uihlein of Uihlein Packaging. He and his wife live in Lake Forest. Their company's over the line in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. And apparently Griffin was just stunned. He was flabbergasted when Uihlein gave money to a conservative operation run by talk show host Dan Proft to attack Richard Irvin and to boost Darren Bailey. So I guess there's not necessarily brotherhood among billionaires, even Republican ones, and so that once again that money from conservative Dick Uihlein joined the huge sums of money from Democratic billionaire J.B. Pritzker to to help Darren Bailey and to drive down those numbers for Richard Irvin, who it's hard to remember now when you see those numbers. Bailey getting twice the vote total of Richard Irvin at this point. But Irvin was the front runner
and let's
6 weeks ago.
How did that fall apart? You know, we started a couple weeks ago, I think it was the beginning of June, where he was no longer going to advertise or run ads on television.
Well, he stopped
in Central
downstate.
and downstate, right? He was
Yeah.
still going to do it in the Chicago area. You had questioned his campaign about that, and what did they say?
Well, they, in a nutshell, you know, I mean, you end up not being able to talk on the record about these things, but sources close to the campaign said that the thinking was on the part of the Irvin campaign that the undecided voters, the undecided Republicans that remained, were up here in the Chicago media market, where about 53% of Republican primary voters live. They thought that's where they could better spend their money.
They wanted to focus their energy. All right, we'll see if it pays off tonight, Mike, as we continue to follow the results here on Fox32Chicago.com and Fox 32 on TV.